Greetings, everyone! Welcome to the Scream Team!
You sound like a used car salesman. It's okay, though.
But I'm doing my teaching voice I do with my students online.
Aww. Students are so cute. They're just little kids.
My Chinese students, it's what they expect. It's like today we were teaching the days of the week and I was greeting them with Sunday, Sunday, Sunday.
I'm glad to know that tradition lives on somewhere.
It does, even in corners of the world where it makes absolutely no contextual sense, it lives on.
Okay, anyway, I am Morgan.
And Damon.
We are the Scream Team, and in today's episode, we are talking about the Netflix original Apostle, which was directed by Gareth Evans, who I was really surprised to see his name in the credits because he is Welsh, and he also directed The Raid, and there is nothing Welsh about The Raid at all.
I know of The Raid in name only. I know nothing exactly about the story. I just know the name and that it was very well regarded. So it makes sense why he got the money.
Really good too.
Yeah, I've heard a lot about that as well.
So, and I've seen Apostle many, many times. I've also seen The Raid. Sidebar, everyone go see The Raid. So I don't know, since you just saw it for the first time last night, if we want to open with what your initial reactions were. This movie was not super well received, but one of the things that I really like about it is that it's just so darn pretty. It's very atmospheric. I love period pieces, and we don't get them a whole lot in horror, I don't feel like. I feel like the trend now for contemporary horror is more like everything's in an urban setting.
Yeah.
Or a place where people recognize, which makes sense because, like, you want to make the familiar scary. It's a good angle to make people nervous.
Were those the words you wanted to open with? I know you said you had some opening remarks you wanted to begin with. Was that it?
Well, basically, yes. Also, Michael Sheen is so handsome. And Dan Stevens. They're both very attractive men. Dan Stevens plays Mr. Thomas, and then Michael Sheen is Prophet Malcolm, who is the leader of, spoiler alert, the cult on the island. That's the twist.
Threw me for a loop. You had talked, I never knew Michael Sheen from anything before, and you kept talking him up, and then I saw this movie, so the entire time I'm watching this film, I'm thinking that the main character, played by Dan Stevens, thinking that must be Michael Sheen. And then the end credits roll, and I was like, wait, Michael Sheen is that old dude? Like the villain of the whole movie? What?
I don't know if I would call him a villain.
He is sympathetic in the end.
Yeah, and I mean, they did, like, Thomas, the whole reason that Thomas goes to the island is to go find his sister, but they only kidnapped Jennifer because they're running out of food. Their weird goddess lady is poisoning the crops. She won't let any of the animals be healthy or something. They don't really go in depth into how exactly she affects the island, just that she makes plants grow and apparently can make them not grow. But maybe that's, that was something that they did on purpose to leave it open to interpretation. Or to let you come to your own conclusions on, like, what her powers were.
Yeah.
And she was so creepy. I don't know what it is about, like, old people. Because, like, they did that in The Taking of Deborah Logan, too, where one of the protagonists was an older woman. That movie was horrifying.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so, whoa my gosh, whoa, what is that? Alright, I had resigned myself not to do any research on this movie either before or afterwards, but here I am on RottenTomatoes.com and whoa! Okay, wow, you're not kidding. I'm like, who wouldn't like this movie? And then I see Tomato meter rating is at an 80%, which seems appropriate. But then, audience score, 54%? What were people not getting? Were they looking in their popcorn at the key moments, or were they on crack, or what? Like, what?
Well,
54?
admittedly, this is not a super fast-paced movie. Now, if you're like me and you tend to, kind of enjoy lower-paced horror films every once in a while, I'm the Pretty Thing That Lives in the House is kind of a good example. A lot of Mr. Astor's movies like Hereditary and Midsummer, I think some people would describe those as slow. And that's not what everybody's into when they go to see a scary movie.
I'm really shocked, actually. That's insane. I really was sitting there watching it thinking, oh, I bet this is a massive hit. I bet people all over I could totally picture Joe Sixpack coming home from his construction job, sitting down and watching this and totally digging it because it's just so textural and it's so primal and it taps into so many fears and so many, there's so much to say about this movie. I can't imagine that it only has a 54% on audience reaction. Who are these people that don't like this movie and why? I have to wonder.
Well,
I guess it does no good to ever figure these things out. It's ridiculous. Okay, well, anyway.
Well, the critical responses that I've seen just at a glance, because I have the wiki page open because I wanted to be prepared, are kind of vague. It's just it's slow, and the scary parts were not scary enough, is basically why people didn't like it. And I mean, that's fair. This is not the scariest movie that I have ever seen, but it is one of the more, I guess, aesthetic horror films that I've seen.
Well, I think the biggest thing, I'll admit this, the biggest thing this film has against it, it's got such ripe ideas. I mean, it's very much in that folk horror tradition of The Wicker Man, Midsummer, what was that, General, Captain Kronos, General Witchfinder. It's got all these sort of elements in place. The thing that it has against it is all those movies are a lean hour and a half long. I mean, and when it comes to horror or comedy, you always want to keep it at a lean 90 minutes if you can manage it. Because those are both the hardest genres to pull off. And if you can keep them short and sweet, that's the way to do it. This thing's longer than almost anything aside from The Godfather or The Irishman or Goodfellas. It really is pushing the... it's not long for me. On Thanksgiving Day, I watched The Irishman, which is at 3 hours, 30 minutes. Didn't move a muscle the entire time. I was captivated. I sat there. I probably had to pee. I don't know. I don't pay attention to such things when I'm watching a finely crafted film. But yeah, for something like this, I think for most people, 2 hours, 10 minutes is probably pushing the limit. Maybe people got bored. It could have maybe lost 30 or 40 minutes and maybe captivated them a little bit better.
I'm trying to think of what might work for other titles like Hereditary and Midsummer. What works for them that Apostle could not pull off?
Because that's a good point to make, because Midsummer I saw in theater. I saw it several times in the theaters, and I saw both the original cut that was released in July, which was almost 3 hours, and then I saw the director's cut, which was over 3 hours, and I preferred the longer one. I thought it made the film that much more rich and full of characterization, and at no point, no matter which one of those two, no matter which of the two I was seeing, I felt like it may as well have been an hour and a half long film for me. I never once questioned the time on either one of those two films, those two versions of the same film. So what is it about Apostle that, I don't know. What do you think? I mean, I will say it is heavy-handed in the amount of action towards the end. The last 30 minutes contains pretty much all the action. It's a slow burn. The build-up is slow, but there's a big payoff by the end.
Yeah, and the reveal of one of the main monsters in the movie, which they apparently is called the Grinder. I didn't know that and was just calling him Vinehead for a little bit.
Yeah.
But he's got a cool design, but he's just this big lumbering dude. He kind of reminds me of Pyramid Head a little bit.
Exactly, I was going to say that.
Of man body, ripped, but then his head's all up.
Yeah. He was a cross for me between Pyramid Head, what's his name? I can't remember. From House of a Thousand Corpses, Matthew McCrory's character, the very tall brother, and then the Leslie Vernon from the mockumentary, Behind the Mask, The Rise of Leslie Vernon. Aesthetically, he was the latter, mixed with, the tallness and the lankiness and the kind of shuffling gait of Matthew McCrory's character from House of a Thousand Corpses and The Devil's Rejects, and then this sort of, very, just this sort of relentless evil of Pyramid Head. He was kind of a cross between all those three, which I didn't mind. That's always scary. I thought, either one of those forms were terrifying. To put them all together into one composite, I'm not saying that's what the director or writers did, but I thought it was cool.
Well, and in Thomas's defense, the Grinder does move a lot faster in Pyramid Head in the games, and he beats him and then strings him up on that awful torture device that mangles his hand up. And I think that would maybe be, forgot about how they give that for
the boy,
Jeremy. Oh, the old school lobotomy in the village square. I did not expect that the first time that I watched it.
The Heathen's Table.
And it bothered me big time. That whole scene with Fionn and Jeremy and their kind of arc where you see them being really lovey-dovey with each other, and even before that you get some hints that they like each other, and they're set up as these really likable characters and you want to support them, and then it goes south in the worst way.
So that whole table sequence and the villagers being involved reminded me a lot of, this film usually is not lumped in with these other kind of Euro village movies that we get with, these sort of, the ones that Midsummer drew from, the folk horror titles. But, what's it called? It's just 100 Maniacs, the Herschel Gordon Lewis film. That film is full of these torture devices that are enacted in the town square, where whoever the infringing party is, they get strung up and slowly tortured, and we see these deaths. It was very akin to those, but of course it was much more graphic, much more realistically portrayed. It definitely brought that to my attention. I guess
at the end, when he puts what looks like a flower petal, I'm not 100% sure if that's what it is.
Yes, it is.
Is it a flower petal?
Yeah, it's like a rose petal.
For a little bit, I expected him to get up and become some weird zombie, and I thought maybe they would explain where the Grinder came from. Because of the goddess on the island, all those plants are attached to her. That could have been a magic flower petal. I don't know. That was something that I was kind of expecting. I was like, oh God, what's going to happen to him? But luckily, he stayed dead. Might have been for the best, but I was still, I was upset about it. Jeremy didn't deserve that.
Well, when we're dealing with a goddess as the main crux of the whole film, and we see the sort of things happen supernaturally by the end of the film, it would not have been that far out of the realm of possibility, for sure.
Now I'm bothered because I'm realizing that we don't know where the Grinder came from or what his story even is. Because he seems to be just like her lackey. He doesn't really seem to listen to Malcolm or Quinn or Charles, who were the three dudes that discovered the island.
There's
Charles and then Frank. I think it's Frank, Quinn, and Malcolm were the three convicts that got off the boat.
Yeah. Had this movie been really wildly successful, we would have had a prequel about the Grinder, for sure.
Well, because there's so much lore that, and it's weird because this did have a long run time for this, like, kind of, this subgenre of horror, I guess, but there's so much that I'm like, you spent so much time focusing on Thomas and, like, the weird stuff in the village, and now there's just all of this stuff that we don't know anything about. Like, yeah, he finds the cave, and he finds the weird drawing. Now I'm mad. Because I really don't think we're going to get a prequel film. As much as I would enjoy seeing that, and that might have been, I don't know. I feel like maybe if we gave this back to Gareth, he would do a good job with the prequel.
So for everyone listening who has not seen this film...
You're just going to have to put a spoiler alert at the top of the episode.
For sure. How many minutes are we into? Oh, well, we're quite a ways in. Yeah, I doubt anyone at this point would still be listening if they didn't already know what this is about. But yes, it's definitely it's a very interesting twist on sort of the folk horror concept of someone coming to a remote island in search of in this case, a loved one, and encountering a weird religious cult that they become involved in, but not involved in. They're sort of, being watchful and being a double agent in means of uncovering things so they can save this person that they're there for. So, I mean, but yeah, very, very gruesome over the course of things.
And you basically just described Silent Hill with those first couple of sentences, and I'm like, oh, yep, that makes sense. Like, Thomas Richardson is actually, Harry Mason from Silent Hill 1, going to look for his daughter, sister, whatever, that's not important. Those tropes are everywhere. But we have to talk about the kind of heavy religious commentary.
Yeah, I was just going to say, we need to move on to that. What do you have to say about... I could talk for days about that, but what do you have to say?
I feel like it was one of the most beautifully shot scenes in the film when we're looking at Thomas's flashback to when he was in Peking, and you see, like, the cross is on fire and it's reflected in his eye. And as someone with Christian leanings, I know that I'm not supposed to, like, double quotes, supposed to like imagery like that, but it just looks so cool. Yeah. And they did a really good, I don't know, for what Thomas was saying, like, in the context of the dialogue that was going on when he was talking to Andrea, I was like, oh, wow, no, this is good. This is good. Like, when he's talking to her about how he kind of lost his faith, but he didn't lose faith in Jennifer. No. He's like, there's nothing good and pure in this world except for my sister, and that touched me.
Yeah. Yeah, it was, yeah, no, I agree with you. That was the number one thing it's very odd to me, too. The thing that struck me to begin, well, first of all, what struck me was the time period. I wanted to know next to nothing about this film when I watched it. You said our next film should be The Apostle. I said, okay, where can I see it? You said Netflix. I pulled it up. I purposely shielded my eyes so I would not see the description or the title or the poster or anything. I didn't want to know anything about this film going into it. When it started playing, I thought, oh my gosh, how refreshing. It's set in 1905. This is great. Like, this is totally my time period. It's my natural predilection for what I like to watch. And the entire time I'm thinking, kudos for the setting. Kudos for how brilliantly beautiful it is. The whole thing was shot in Wales. It's a gorgeous film. The cinematography is fantastic. The direction is phenomenal. There was a weird sort of strobing effect with the footage that I've never seen before. I was trying to figure it out from a technical standpoint. It's got a really weird... There was something very distinct about the way the film was shot that gives it a look that's very... I don't know. It's just particular. It's just so odd with the way... I don't know if it's the way the codec was, processed the film before they submitted it, or if it was the cameras or what. But it just has this weird sort of strobing effect throughout the whole film that kind of gives it another worldly feel. Which I'm not knocking it. I'm not nitpicking anything. I'm saying it had some sort of a very unique, distinctive look. Also because of that. Not only because of the cinematographer, not only because of the actual setting, the locale, the time period, the just the angles and everything. But it just did have a unique feel about it. And I kept cracking myself up the whole time because I kept thinking this is Silver Dollar City if everyone were on crack or acid. It was like this family fun park taken over by mad lunatics.
Well, I'm seeing, like, the thing is that Malcolm, at least, and Frank, don't seem like bad guys.
Yeah,
you know?
right.
Like,
Not after a while. At the first, I thought, where's his gun? Why is he not picking them all off sniper fashion from his window? And then we get to know them over time, and then we feel that sort of sympathetic standpoint.
That is a dumb idea. I really don't think if he's trying to infiltrate a village and find his sister, he's just going to start capping people.
Well, there's the point where he's up in the upper room, and they make the announcement in the town square. It's Malcolm and Andrew.
Jennifer.
Yeah, and, well, Jennifer's the one being tortured, and they're saying, look, we're torturing her in front of you all, and we're actually going to kill her within, like, X number of seconds if no one speaks up. And he starts struggling and writhing around on the floor in agony because he thinks she's going to be killed right then. But yet he never does anything to stop it. And I thought if he only had a gun, all he would have to do is pick them off the cart, run down, grab her, ride to the shore, get away. But that would have robbed all the emotional weight of the struggle of the rest of the film.
But also wouldn't have worked. Malcolm had an entire, like, squad.
See, that's what I wondered. The entire time I was wondering, are these men in the town are they as faithful to Malcolm as the Russian bolt soldiers were, for lack of a better term, to the Wicked Witch of the West? Would they have just been like, oh, you killed him, yay, now we can do our own thing? Or would they have really turned and revolted?
I didn't get that vibe at all. Like, I loved that scene where those dudes skewered, like, that guy tried to stab Malcolm, and then
Sure.
stopped him, and those guys stepped up with their pipes and just went shink, and turned him into a double-stick popsicle.
Yeah. I guess you're right. I forgot.
I never got the vibe that, like, everyone seemed genuinely happy to be there. It didn't even seem that creepy to me at first. I was like, oh, this doesn't seem that bad. You know, they're just a village on an island, and, like, yeah, it's kind of weird, and yes, they kidnapped his sister, but, I don't know, when I think of a cult film, I think of, like, The Sacrament. I think when people think cults, they immediately jump to, like, The Heaven's Gate, where it's, like, mass suicide, or human sacrifice, and they did touch on that a little bit, because the jars that they gave them are apparently for bloodletting.
Yeah.
Goddess.
Right.
But they didn't, like, there wasn't any, like, talk of, like, we're all going to kill ourselves and ascend, or there wasn't, like, huge bodily sacrifice. I would not call what happened to Jeremy sacrifice at all. That was just cruel and awful. And I think Quinn was the real villain of the movie.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, he definitely turned out to be that, for sure. That was a nice reversal. I liked that sort of interplay.
And then remember, there's also that brief shot where the goddess is just kind of chilling by a tree with a blanket around her, and it's heavily implied that, like, Quinn is the one that took her and, like, kind of bent her into the shape that she was in when Thomas found her, where she's surrounded by all the roots and stuff.
Yes, and I appreciated that. Those familiar with the Anne Rice Vampire Chronicles, I think you can't get away from the sort of reference there that it's like the king and the queen of the damned being found and being rescued and taken and entombed within the ground, but fed blood regularly as a means of preserving and keeping this lineage of all vampiredom going. And then, of course, you know, they even say, you know, it's even mentioned within the Queen of the Damned novel. It even talks about, prior to them, the concept of old gods having been discovered by a human and protected and fed. So it's a very old concept, and I feel like, aside from the Queen of the Damned in modern fiction, there really hasn't been a lot of that. So I really appreciated the idea that they were going there by showing her entombed in the roots and the branches and everything, and being fed. I thought that was all very well done. It reminds me of a lot of other different cinematic devices, such as Helena Marcos in Suspiria, to even in The Wicker Man, not the real Wicker Man, but the horrible remake with Ellen Burstyn sort of being kind of a goddess who's ensconced in a sort of area all to her own as a queen bee almost, being given sustenance and giving directions from beyond some sort of very isolated place. So I found that it's fascinating.
I just think Snow White, which is a lot more pleasant.
Yeah. What bothered me though, on retrospect, thinking, after the movie, I thought, there's that amazing scene where he escapes down into the void. He's in the tunnels. Both Malcolm and I don't remember which other man it was, but Frank.
What part of the movie are you talking about?
It's the part where he's in the tunnels and they're coming back to the house because they know he's in the house. And he to get away from them, he slips underground into what we assume is the sewer. And suddenly he's in this tunnel full of water and roots. And he's swimming along the tunnel, and then suddenly there's this woman there, which is the goddess. And it's of all the freaky things, here's this zombie woman attacking him in tight quarters of this cave tunnel under almost completely underwater. And so I had to wonder, how was the goddess, how was she free to be floating around in this underground water passage to attack him the way she did, with this fury and this passion? And then the rest of the movie, she's completely tied up and rooted in one spot as if she had been the whole time. What are your thoughts on that?
My thoughts on that are, that's one of the downsides of this movie, is that there are inconsistencies and, well, I don't know if I want to call them inconsistencies so much as I want to say, missing lore. She could totally have the power to, because then Malcolm gets mad and is you showed yourself to him, so I don't know if she actually has the power to make herself appear to someone.
Yeah.
There were so many stressful things about that scene, because I'm one, he can't run. Two, there's water. Three, the idea of, if she's down there, he can't see her.
Right.
And she's just suddenly there. And I was
Yeah.
Okay, well, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. We see this a lot for a reason, and it's stressful every time I see it.
Yeah.
So, I just wish, if I had my way and got this story plus all of, the missing back information that I want, this probably would have been a lot longer of a movie. And I don't know if that would have made it better or worse.
I'm not a big fan of miniseries, but this just the way this was told. Okay, that's the thing right there. My number one thing, I really enjoyed the film, but by the end I was thinking to myself, this movie, as a movie, is unfocused. This movie as a mini-series would have been pretty awesome. Add another hour on and go into more of the lore and break it up into more of an episodic sort of content. Because otherwise there were a lot of ideas explored, but they were all kind of... I was never quite sure where it was supposed to focus on. It just kind of, it started as one thing and then it became something else, and then there's this, and then we have to take all this lore we're suddenly thrown. And then even the last scene would have been more satisfying had there been more lore about the way this thing works. But seeing that last scene, I was just that's a little bit too far out out of the realm of, it's kind of a satisfying ending in a way, but at the same time, it was too far outside of what we were already supposed to have understood about the island and the goddess and everything to buy into it. So, yeah.
Oh, I bought into it.
It makes sense, but I'm just saying, like, it didn't have as much heft as it could have had.
Well, what ending would you have preferred then? Because I found that ending it was bittersweet because he doesn't get to go with Andrea and Jennifer, but he saved them, and Malcolm is still alive, so I like to think that he becomes, like, the new god of the island. At that point, I was ready for anything because obviously there were no rules. I'm like, well, this might as well happen.
I guess it's because we're told that she's a goddess, and this is why she was able to make things grow. So the idea that he, as a mortal man, for no reason, just because he fought against her, was suddenly his blood was able to have the power of creation behind it, kind of threw me. I'm like, wait, does that mean he's a god? Or was he a god all along and we just thought, it's just, it brought up a lot of questions.
Well, and you have to remember, and this is something that I'm just not thinking of, like, we're using their vernacular. Like, everyone in the movie calls her a goddess, but, like, man, I know maybe 10% of mythology, and there's totally a possibility that she could be some other supernatural creature, and I just don't know, because I don't have a thorough enough knowledge of mythology to just whip off the top of my head.
Yeah.
Just because they call her that doesn't mean that's what she is.
Right.
And maybe and that made me think that there was something with the island, kind of, to bring it back to Silent Hill, because I don't like the movies, but the video games are great. People kind of tend to think that it's Silent Hill itself is a town that's haunted that makes all the weird stuff happen, which is kind of true. So I feel like that's the same for this case. Like, maybe it's the island somehow.
Yeah.
But we don't know that.
Yeah.
Like, if that's a thing that he wanted to get across, then he did not do a good job, but then I also don't know if that's what he had in mind. That's just how I interpreted it.
Yeah.
He burned her, and that energy had to go somewhere.
Yeah.
And that also made me think about that lady's backstory, because, like, is that how she became a part of the island? We don't know.
Yeah. There's definitely a lot of mythology there that could be expanded upon.
Well, and especially, like, maybe, like, could this be drawing off of some old Welsh story that you and I don't know because we're dumb Americans?
I think I would know if it was, because that's been my kind of kit and caboodle since age 2, other than film. It's been world religions and mythology, and I've studied a lot of Welsh mythology, and I don't remember anything referencing this at all. Like, it really feels very just sort of slapdash. I don't want to say slapdash. That sounds horrible. Yeah, that's not the case. I want to say what's the word? Not slapdash, but it's like it's kind of like a potpourri of different sorts of things that come together out of what one of the greatest Welsh mythological tales for me is the White Worm tale, which Bram Stoker immortalized in his Lair of the White Worm, which was made into a movie with Hugh Grant. It's a great film. It's a great story, I think. But yeah, it's got some of the same sort of concepts of this, like, giant worm that's fought back by Christendom. It's like this giant, it's basically kind of a Cthulhu-esque sort of monstrosity being faced against people who have to try to hide it and bury it. The White Worm in that tale is kept in a woman's basement for people that she reserves judgment for, and it's just sort of and then on the larger scale, on the Catholic tableau, we've got these saints and apostles who are fighting against these giant worms, these worms of hell that are manifesting in the world. So, there's some precedence to some of the aspects of this story, but I don't think it's based on anything particular. from what I know. I could be wrong, but just speaking from my own study and experience.
Well, and at this point, there's that saying that there's nothing new under the sun. You can look at pretty much any movie and take elements of it and be like, oh, so like in this, X, Y, and Z, and oh, this other part is kind of like A, B, C.
Right.
Which shouldn't, I don't know, some people get mad about, like, they get mad that we, quote-unquote, don't make enough original material anymore. And sometimes that's true. Even I get sick of, like, the Disney reboots and the remakes and, like, yeah, this thing is great, and, like, the Ghostbusters trailer for the third one dropped today, and I haven't watched it. And I'm like, well, I mean, I guess I could go for a third Ghostbusters movie, or I guess a fourth.
Fourth, yeah. Well, third, because the last one completely ignored the existence of the first two, but yes.
So, I don't think that just because you can compare something to other things doesn't necessarily make it bad, because you could do that with literally any piece of media.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's like, this is hardly the only title with, like, religious commentary, and although it is the only movie that I've seen where a character is murdered in basically a forced abortion, that was a new one.
Yeah.
I'm sure this happened, though. I just haven't seen it. And I hated that part so much because, yeah, they're a cult, but Malcolm, like, had, like, kind of Christian aesthetics when he was preaching. He made it seem like he was genuinely, like, like, God is the, beckoned us out of the storm, and, like, this place is great, and blah, blah, blah. And, like, of course, obviously, like, the livestock's died and the crops are all messed up. But I don't know. There's got to be, like, some kind of metaphor there. And I just don't. I'm not smart enough to articulate it into a point. Because, like, you see the Christian missions getting, like, burned to death by these, by the Chinese people, again, when he goes during the Boxer Rebellion. And you have this other cult, but they're just as monstrous. I don't know. It's just bad. Really.
I think that, it was, there was so much there about a meditation on faith. Even the fact for the villagers themselves to be... I was really wowed by the fact that they invented new books and new scripture and things. Like, nothing was tied into... Like, we kind of got the prospect that they were traditional Bible believers who then opted into this sort of new... and I was going to try to avoid mentioning this, but I can't get away from it. They did remind me a lot of the Mormons of the 1830s in the U.S. because of the fact that suddenly you have books of the Bible. In this film, we hear, like, he tells them to read from the book of St. Therese, or he just says the book of Therese, and then he gives like a verse and a scripture to read, and it's all highly original scripture and books that are mentioned within this that aren't part of what these people would ordinarily know. This is obviously something that they have bought into as not a replacement, but an addition to what they previously had known and grew up with. And it did not escape me, but that the effect that the Mormons had ventured west and they colonized Utah, and it was at the time, a very sort of isolated region where they could live in peace without interference. It was the same thing here, where it was the same. It wasn't the same time period exactly. It was a little bit later, but they, same look for sure. Same look, same sort of style of living, and the way that they had absconded to a remote island for the same purpose, because they were kind of shunned for their beliefs. And if you want to go even further, you talk about like the Mormons. It all began with the prophet Joseph Smith having come across a an angel basically that directed him, and in this one you have Malcolm, who was sort of directed by a goddess he randomly encountered in the wilderness, the same as Joseph Smith had encountered an angel in the wilderness. So there were a lot of parallels there that I appreciated. I thought that was all interesting, and that's not to make any sort of negative commentary at all on Mormons or anything. I just thought it was kind of a nice touch in the way that it sort of riffs at history.
Well, the difference is that the Mormons don't have creepy goddess lady in a vine, weird coffin bed sarcophagus thing. They do have plates, but they did not have goddess lady.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming that, like, the three of them found it and then somehow sent for their children later, and then maybe their family stuck around and told other people about the island. And that lady on the boat that was talking to Thomas mentioned prayer meetings. So I'm kind of wondering, like, how they infiltrated society and, like, got people to join them.
Yeah,
so that was, again, another thing that wasn't really touched on.
There's another prequel element which would be amazing. I swear, if he would go back and make a prequel of this and fold it in with this and cut it up into a sort of series, I think that would be fascinating. I think he should. I would. I'm a big proponent of doing a one shot of everything all at once in a theatrical feature. With The Irishman, Scorsese's film, it's only 3.5 hours long. I had no problem sitting there watching the whole thing without moving, and I absorbed it all and thought it was amazing. But all these people on Instagram were saying, oh, the only way you can get through this movie is to do this. Let's watch it as a miniseries, because this is how people watch stuff these days. And they made these graphics, these infographics, where it was like, you have to break it up over 4 nights, and here's how you do it. On night 1, you watch up to this point, and they give these exact time codes. Cut it off at these points every night, and it'll be like a television series. This is the only way you can watch this film. And that's really ridiculous to me. But I have begun to come around and say, okay, we can't always be these stodgy old media creators that insist upon the way it's just been for 120 years. You gotta say, okay, for all the people that want to watch it like this, here's how you do it. Well, this would be a way for Gareth Evans, if he wanted to really do a second one. I think that would be a smart move, would be to go ahead and make the prequel as a separate film, but I'd say also intermix them as Tarantino did with Hateful Eight, and I've heard he's going to do this with a couple of other films, potentially Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, cut it up in different ways on Netflix for people to consume in whatever way they see fit.
Well, first of all, not everyone can sit still for 3.5 hours and watch a movie. Okay, we're not all built the same.
Hey, 5 hours is my, there's so many 5-hour silent films I've sat through without even batting an eye. I'm like, why? You can't even handle 3.5? But yeah, I get it. People are... And that's another...
different viewing habits. Don't trash people just...
I'm not. It's just funny that people will say, oh my gosh, I can't possibly watch anything 3 hours or longer. And then they'll spend 5 hours watching a series on Netflix in bed. Like, they'll binge watch 5 hours worth. And it's like, you sat there for 5 hours watching the same thing. Why couldn't it have just been a full feature-length film that long? I don't know what the difference is, but
Mental
whatever.
breaks.
Mental breaks.
Are what the difference is. And if they're anything like me, I'll binge watch stuff, but I'm also usually doing other stuff. And
don't you dare say that. No, heresy. No, I make my daughter turn her phone off. If we're watching something, I'm like, phone off? All distractions off, we're watching. There's no, I'm doing 5 other things at the same time. Oh, that drives me crazy.
Well, if I'm watching a movie with my family, I'll turn my phone off. But if it's just me by myself, I'll just pick a series to put on and not pay that close attention.
How do you know they don't show some amazing thing when you're in the 5 seconds you're looking down, that they don't show some insert shot that changes the meaning of the entire series?
I don't. That's the risk that I take.
Ah, so you do acknowledge there's a risk in that.
I guess. I just feel like you're being super uptight about how people watch movies and TV.
Well, it's because I've been to movies before where that was the thing. They would be simple hour and 40-minute films, and there would be a single 3-second shot that would pop up on screen that would tell you the secret of the whole movie, and I would be sitting next to someone who would just so happen, because their timing was this ridiculous, that they would happen to be looking down at that exact moment of time to tie their shoes or pick up their popcorn or fiddle with whatever's in their bag that's bothering their feet at the moment. And then they would look up and have missed the entire crux of the movie and then walk out of the movie and say, that movie sure sucked because we never got to find out blah, blah, blah. And they'd be like, oh my gosh, did you miss it because they showed up blatantly when blah, blah. But I happened to notice in that same moment that you were doing that. And you missed it. Like, it's like people would like come down hard on films for missing the reveal because they weren't paying attention. I don't know.
Well, I think if enough people watch a movie, it's going to be pretty easy to weed those people out.
You know, that's my struggle as a filmmaker. It's like, do I kowtow to the lowest common denominator in the sense that I have to, if I'm ever going to show a reveal like that, that's that important, do I show it several times over with big dramatic effects? So it's like, come on, look up at the screen right now. If you're not right now, you're missing something really big. Or do I just not go that route and show anything that's like a big twist because people miss it because they go to the bathroom or whatever?
I feel like people are going to do what they want, so you should just do what you want.
But then they think the movie's bad, and then they spread it to 100 people at the office the following Monday. Don't go see this film, it sucked. And then, boom, your film tanks because all these people missed the 3-second reveal that made the whole movie relevant.
I don't think an entire theater of people is going to miss it. I really don't. I think out of an entire room of people, someone's going to see it, and they will correct them. And be like, no, he actually did show this. This was when you were in the washroom.
Okay. All right.
You're being super heavy with it. You got to lighten up a little.
This is one of those things that bothers me at night. All right. Let's not pass this review by without mentioning the outstanding acting performances. I cannot get over Lucy Boyington as Andrea. She was a breath of fresh air. Where did she come from?
Bohemian Rhapsody.
Was she really in that film? As whom?
She was Freddie Mercury's... Hold on. I have IMDb apologist.
His wife?
Freddie Mercury's first wife.
Holy cow! She looked nothing the same, but she was phenomenal.
So, and that was another reason why I was surprised that this movie didn't do as well as it did, because you have Dan Stevens, who was in Beauty and the Beast, you had Lucy Boynton, who was in Bohemian Rhapsody, Michael Sheen, who has a very long track record, which, like, I guess right now most people know him for Good Omens. Like Aziraphale, but I don't know enough about when either of these were shot. I don't know if he did this one first.
Oh my gosh, I'm looking at a picture of Michael Sheen, and he looks like he's in his 30s, and in this movie he looked like he was in his early 60s. What the heck?
He has the range, darling.
That is amazing. Okay.
I don't know, Michael Sheen definitely was a bright spot in this film for me, and that was one of the reasons why I picked it, and also because I've been super into Good Omens lately.
Okay, well, he was phenomenal. I really liked him, but Dan Stevens, I don't really... he looked incredibly familiar, but I don't know him from anything that I write off. I'm sure I've seen him in stuff before. He was in Downton Abbey. Holy cow. Are you kidding me? Wow. Okay. That's why. Like, I totally. It's funny that right now in this instance I see this. No wonder he was so familiar to me. I had no idea. Wow.
And I think everybody got to use their actual accents. A lot of people get upset because Michael Sheen is Welsh, but he never gets to just use his normal speaking voice. But, like, he definitely didn't sound English in this movie, so I'm wondering if maybe that was a Welsh accent. But I hear them so little that I'm not even sure.
It's crazy that I didn't recognize Dan Stevens as Matthew Crawley from Downton Abbey. Whoa. Okay, no wonder I had such an affection for him when I first saw him on screen. And then the girl that played, what was her name? The one that was pregnant.
Fionn.
Huh? Yeah, Fionn.
Fionn?
And she was played by
Christine Forsyth.
And I don't know what she's. Oh, here's. She was in. Christine Forsyth. She was amazing. She was really good. Yeah, not too much. It looks like her career really began around 2016, and she's only kind of been in some shorts and a TV series, and not a lot. But she was very well represented. It was killer the moment that she tried to stand up for herself, and everything that followed. That was brutal. In fact, I was not prepared for how brutal this film was going to be. It was intensely. I talked about the Herschel Gordon Lewis 100 Maniacs earlier. It was the same concept and same execution, but with the sort of dread and the absolute realistic representation of dread and gore that went along with it that made it brutal. Because in Herschel Gordon Lewis, it was a little bit of a cartoony sort of reaction where you have like ketchup for blood, basically. In this, it was, I noted on the Heathens table when the screw was coming out of the boy's head, and we see there's a little trace of hair still attached to the screw. I thought, oh my gosh, wow! Like the attention to detail for that was unreal, unsettling. So
I think for all the criticisms you can make of this movie, the acting really isn't one of them. I feel like everybody did a good job. They did a good job with the screw on the table. What do you call it? The Heathens table?
Yeah.
On today's episode of Today I Learned the name of a torture device. Anywho, I can kind of understand the critics when they talked about how some of the more violent moments that were supposed to be kind of climactic just kind of missed the mark. Because I would have loved for the Grinder, like, they could have worked that up so much more than they did, because he's the biggest threat. You'd think it would be, like, the main deity, but he doesn't really seem to do a whole lot.
There's, and that's part of what I was saying earlier, when personally, just gut reaction without looking at any critical commentary. That's why I wanted to see this movie knowing absolutely nothing about it. My first instinct was, I like this, but it's unfocused. And the unfocused part has to do with not the run time is too long. That would have been most people's solution. Well, let's cut out 40 minutes of it. My solution is, let's add more to it and make it a miniseries. I want to know more about the Heathens Table. I want to know more about the goddess. I want to know more about the creature that services her commandments and rips people up and grinds them. I don't know. And what are your thoughts? Would it have been a better movie if it was an hour longer as a miniseries, or shorter as a just a lean hour and 40-minute film?
I just had two thoughts. One, we've had this discussion before when we talked about Dr. Sleep, about how miniseries is kind of like the best medium for horror films that try to pack this much into a relatively short amount of time. But yes, I absolutely agree that this would have been good and probably better as a miniseries. And then two, Corrections Corner, arc for My Favorite Murder. I just realized that I said that there wasn't really a whole lot of human sacrifice, but I'm just now remembering the fact that the grinder dude strung up Jennifer in a bag. It was definitely going to grind her up. But, okay, let me rephrase. They didn't have any, ritualistic human sacrifice.
Yeah.
I think Jennifer might have just been a one-off situation because they needed food and stuff so badly that they kidnapped her.
Thank you for clarifying that for me, because that was one point I was really confused on, was who's the random person in the bag that gets strung up that he beats with a stick for a few minutes and then loses interest. And for me, I thought, I didn't realize that could have been Jennifer, but then I thought, well, that's, why am I assuming that? I shouldn't just assume that. And it's the same problem I had with Midsummer, where, even though I've seen the film theatrically probably 4 or 5 times, there are people in that last scene when they're bringing them into the sacrificial house that I'm just clueless as to who's that? Is that one of the people we've seen before, or is that just some random person that was there? It's really hard to identify sometimes, the whole timeline of who's infracted upon whom, and is this I don't know. It's just, unless there's something really explicit about, why they're there, I kind of miss sometimes who's the person in the bag being beat up with a stick. I don't know. But I'm glad to hear you say it was her.
Jennifer. And now I'm imagining that that's probably what happened to, because they thought that other guy was the dude who was trying to sneak in, and he got his throat slit for no reason. But there was a second where Malcolm doubted, and he's like, "Are you sure this is the right person?" And then Frank's like, "Yeah, the weird mark on his car, blah blah blah." So Malcolm is intuitive. He had a feeling that it wasn't the right dude. But, no, that guy definitely got a shower. Okay. That's probably what that machine is for. There's so many things I'm learning about this movie as I talk about it.
Yeah.
Look at me, putting the pieces together. I am so smart. Damn it, edit this to make me sound smart.
Are you kidding? There's no editing. This is going straight forward.
Oh, God. No, we gotta edit it. Don't say that.
I wanted to remark as well upon, let's see, the music I thought was phenomenal. I mean, it wasn't I wouldn't go buy the soundtrack to it and dig on the themes and stuff like that. But I thought for what it matched very well. It was well done, and it wasn't distracting in the way any composers will tell you the best soundtracks are not the ones that draw attention to themselves. They're the ones that complement the action. Well, this is one of those. It really. But I still look out for it. I'm always very mindful about the way the music is being used, and to see the way, to hear the way the music kind of blended with the story was very. It worked so well. It was good.
It was so not distracting that I don't think I would recognize any of the instrumental pieces. It
was a lot of percussive music, and what I loved about it was the moment where not only were there moments where the music the drum beat sort of mimicked the human heartbeat, but there were moments as well where it was important to the plot of the story where the characters needed to tap the bricks in a certain rhythm to unloosen them to get inside the house, and they did it to the beat of the drums. And I thought that was very that just seemed to it fit very well. It was well done. It was executed in a very particular fashion which worked. And I'm trying my best to find the composer for the film. I don't know. I'm really having some trouble here. This is kind of sad. Like, usually the composer is right front and center. Along
the
with
wiki says music by Fajar Yuskamo and Arya Prayogi.
Okay.
I could have very easily butchered their names just then. I'm sure that I mispronounced them, but that is what the Wikipedia page says.
Okay.
All I know is that ending song was awesome.
Yeah, I was just going to say. Oh my gosh. Okay, so I sat there. You know, I always sit through all credits to the very end because it's a mood setter. It's your way to extricate yourself from the film. Most people just flip it off and they move on to something else. I'm like, how can you do that? No. You need like 3 or 4 minutes to just sit and listen to music and like write it out and think about what you just saw. But oh yeah, I see now. Music by. Yeah, there's no. It's weird they don't have a composer credit. It's just music by, and then they're thrown in there. But yeah, they. I thought that last song during the credits. I watched the whole credits, and I was really paying attention to that song. And I thought I really want to bring this song up during the podcast, but most people probably won't be familiar with it because. Yeah, most people don't watch the credits, but yeah, it was very well done. It fit very well. I thought it was beautiful, and I think that it very much needs to stand as sort of a theme for the film.
I also like the tavern music.
Yeah, all the sort of Irish-style music they were performing. I shouldn't say Irish, because hello, they're Welsh, obviously. I think they would all rake me over the coals. The Welsh music.
Well, dude, I don't know enough about, like, I feel like we don't see a whole lot of Welsh culture in American media.
We don't.
Like, in narratives that are set in, like, places like Great Britain.
I remember in 1993 when Lair of the White Worm came out on video, and I was so smitten by the idea that there was another, like, you know, fairly large-scale adaptation of a Bram Stoker story up on screen, and it starred Hugh Grant. He was like the darling of that year with 4 Weddings and a Funeral and, you know, several other projects going forward. But to watch that film, and it was so quirky to me, but then again, all British stuff, you know, compared to U.S. audiences back then, especially it seemed very quirky. But I remember at the end of that movie, the credits has a song called The Dampton Worm, which really is about the mythological root of the whole movie. It's never called the Dampton Worm in the film proper, but if you study Welsh mythology, that's a thing. And this band, which sounds very much like a Celtic band, they're playing this whole sort of rousing bar song about this evil worm that is taking over this community. I thought it was such a great song, and I remember plugging my AV cables into the back of the VCR so I could capture it to cassette tape. And I'd listen to it over and over and over and think no one will ever know anything about this song. Like, I never had any sort of forward thought about what the future would be like. Like, I could jump on Amazon right now and probably download that song for 99 cents or whatever. But or it's probably on Spotify for free. But the Dampton Worm song I would listen to repeatedly, and I got so much out of it as sort of a device for conveying to me what Welsh mythology is all about. And so this song that played over the credits, to me, wasn't quite as quirky and mischievous. It was a little bit more kind of a straightforward ballad about the idea of a goddess overtaking an island. But it was still very well done, and it reminded me of that sort of connection.
We need more. I just want to write him a letter. Dear Mr. Evans, please make more Welsh movies. We don't have enough of them, and you seem pretty neat. Love, Morgan.
Yeah, we don't have enough of them. In fact, as a student of world religion and mythology, what blows my mind is that, like the Irish mythologies that exist are so rich and so powerful, and we have never yet had a single big screen adaptation of any of them. Like, it blows my... Like, so I'm going to be the first person to do that. I'm just going to full-on commit. Like, I'm going to go, make that happen in a big way, because why people haven't, to this point, I have no idea.
Now keep in mind that just because you haven't seen it doesn't mean that it doesn't exist.
I would know if it was a feature-length film. Feature films... Yeah, there may no. I'm not discounting like little direct-to-video sort of things or little commercials or short films that may have dealt with the topic. So I'm talking about full-on feature-length films approved by the MPAA that has name actors. Like, it's never happened before. So. Yeah, but it's not just that. There's so many other mythologies with all these other cultures that are just ripe for the taking, especially now that technology is what it is. There's no excuse. But, anyway, kudos to Gareth Evans for tapping into some of that for us.
Yes. We need more people from other countries making films about their own countries.
Yeah.
Of mythology.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I could go on a whole rant about a lot of different ones. I've got a whole list of different ones that are like super exclusive to different Celtic countries that are amazing, that most people have never heard of, but they're well regarded in a lot of circles. But I would add this one to the list for sure. I mean, for Welsh mythology, it definitely... it's right up there. It's hard to watch. I thought, I wondered about someone like Miss Boyington, like, what is it like for her to star in a film like this and then to see some of the gut-wrenching things that happen? I mean, for her, is that, I'm sure she's proud of the film and it's been well regarded, but, it's like, there's always an infinite amount of ways things can be told and retold in different ways at varying levels of gore or not or non.
Damon, do you want to give your summary, your final thoughts on Apostle?
Yeah, my final thoughts about Apostle are that I think it's a great watch. I'm kind of shocked that it's not better known. I had never heard of it until you mentioned it to me. I feel like it should have been a lot more influential than it was or is, but definitely worth a watch. A lot of solid performances all around. Great story, unique story. Like I said, narrative is a little bit unfocused, or I shouldn't say unfocused, it's more of an episodic sort of approach. But that didn't bother me ultimately. I still really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I think I still recommend it. Great score, very, very atmospheric, which is what made up for the fact that I just rewatching it, I realized that there's so many, I don't want to call them plot holes, but just, I guess, areas where the narrative could have been expanded. Because there's this entire deity on this island, and they don't ever really go into what exactly she is or where she came from. We just get that one shot where the guys find her, and then that's kind of that's it. That's all that we get in terms of backstory. But wonderful performances from Michael Sheen and Dan Stevens and Lucy Boynton. Wonderful, wonderful casting choices. Very good. So,
indeed.
It evens out, I think. It's not my favorite horror movie at this point. I've seen it so many times that now I'll just put it on for comfort and background noise. But not terrible. Morgan's final level of approval is not bad. Could be worse. You should watch it and give it a shot. Watch it one time. If you really don't like it, nobody's going to make you watch it again. We're not going to come to your house and, hold a gun to your head and be like, no, you need to be like Morgan and watch this 15 more times. And honestly, Michael Sheen was my favorite part of Apostle. After comparing his performance in this to, Good Omens, his range. He has the range, darling. But,
yeah.
anywho.
He helped carry it for sure.
Oh, yeah. And if we're really lucky, then maybe we'll get a sequel. I kind of doubt it. But you never know. Stranger things have happened.
Indeed.
Like, I don't know, the entire country going into a lockdown. And something that feels like an apocalypse, or at least something that has completely just destroyed the hope of everyone. It's very, very sad.
Yeah, real life horror.
But, this is way scarier than anything that I've ever watched. Like, I'd rather sit and just watch, like, I don't know, what's a movie that made me super uncomfortable? I guess that if I could go back and just watch The Taking of Deborah Logan over and over again, like, I'd rather do that than be dealing with this. Which we will probably do an episode on.
Yes, I thought of that the other day. We do need to put that on the docket for sure.
Well, at this point, we're going to have such a huge docket because now it's like all I do is watch Netflix.
Well,
I mean, I'm still working, but I'll put it on and, like, kind of binge watch stuff as I'm at the dining table. And so I'm hoping that maybe I'll discover some hidden gems, and then we could put them on the list.
Like I was just telling you, my schedule is finally free for the first time in 5 years, more or less. So I was just, I've been making a list this past week of all the horror films that I've missed out on the past 5 to 8 years, and it's quite sizable. I'm almost up to 200 titles so far, and I will be binging those like crazy. So there's going to be a lot to talk about.
Oh my goodness. Okay, well, dude, go nuts. Might as well do it now because there is literally nowhere else to go and nothing else to do. I miss bars. I miss restaurants. I miss getting to be around real human beings, and I don't just mean like going to Target where everyone's all freaked out and then it's like, yeah, we're together, but we're freaked out together, and it is not the same as like a normal going to Target trip, which I enjoy because I am a basic white girl. I love Target, and I'm not scared to admit it. There's cute stuff there all the time, very bad for my wallet, but anyway.
Yeah, at least we're saving crazy money.
In theory, I still have access to Amazon. That's not... probably to my detriment at this point, but I still have a job and I'm still working. It's my money. I could spend it how I want. Anyway, okay, well, that's all that I've got.
Okay, well, that wraps us up then. So, in the meantime, we'll be releasing another episode very soon after this one. But in the meantime, keep screaming.
And stay safe. And don't go outside. Just pretend that life has turned into an actual horror movie. And don't do anything.
Sage wisdom. All right, goodbye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.